All right, welcome back. We're doing another night episode. It's just gonna be me and Joe today because Ethan is off doing a beat reporter thing with IU Student Television for the IU versus Illinois basketball game. So he'll be back with us next week. But we're approaching the championship game in 1 week from today, or at least 1 week from when we're recording. It's a very interesting game. I'm not upset about the game at all. I'm actually really excited for this game because, I mean, if you remember last year, Notre Dame played Ohio State in a game that they probably should have won, but they lost because they had one less man on the field than they should have on the goal line, and Ohio State was able to score that touchdown to win that game. So it's going to be, there's a little bit of a story there for sure.
No, and yeah, add that to the fact that Marcus Freeman played at Ohio State. You know, this is honestly, it's starting to be a new rivalry. These two teams kind of going at each other. That game last year came down literally to the last second. I think the clock was at 0 when Ohio State scored that last touchdown, and Notre Dame only had 10 people on the field. But this is finally here. This is what we've been like talking about the whole year, and it's finally here. It feels so surreal because it's the season has been so long. Like it's really crazy to think that we're on January 13th. The game's played. When is the game played? Is it January 20th?
Oh yeah, January 20th.
Yeah,
on Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah. So what a finale to the season. I'm very interested to see what's gonna happen. Both those games, the Notre Dame and Penn State game and the Ohio State-Texas game, they were very good games. They kind of came down to the wire a little bit. Texas, I know it was a 14-point win for Ohio State, but obviously you had the Jack Sawyer strip and scoop and score at the end. And, I mean, I don't know. I think that we're reaching like a climax here. And like you said earlier on the other podcast, absolute cinema is just it has to happen. But yeah.
Yeah, this has been such an amazing season. I think this is probably my favorite season that I think I've ever watched so far. Just a lot of new storylines. I mean, you kind of see, it's kind of sad to see some old rivalries kind of go away with the college expansion and stuff. But I mean, we see new rivalries come back, like Texas A&M comes back after like 14 years. And I mean, like you said, like probably 2 minutes ago, like Notre Dame and Ohio State, that's kind of a new rivalry that's forming. And I mean, Notre Dame and Michigan used to be a huge rivalry, but now it feels like that's kind of gone away, and now it's more Ohio State versus Notre Dame, which I think is really cool, especially because I mean they're really close. I mean it's a border battle. I mean, yeah, Indiana 100%. School versus an Ohio school, like that's a big border battle right there. And I mean this season is really, it's bringing in a new age of football where the dominance of the South is kind of going away. And now we're seeing more of a domination from the Midwest and the North, which is really interesting. And that's going to create more storylines.
We're taking it
too.
Back.
Yeah,
we're taking it back. I think that NIL has balanced things out. I don't know if we have full parity. I don't know if that's possible in a college sport, if you could have full parity. But I really feel like these are two teams that if we had the 4-team college football format, they wouldn't be in the championship, obviously, because Notre Dame suffered that awful loss earlier in the year to Northern Illinois, and then Ohio State suffered a huge upset to Michigan. They also lost to Oregon. So this is honestly a great representation of how like more teams are in it. And even though I know we saw a lot of blowouts early on, I'm personally just glad that we're able to see two teams that still fought their way and still played their games in the playoff and didn't let the past define their present.
Yeah, and by past, I'm sure you're talking about like 10 years ago, being like, oh, Bama was good 10 years ago, and they've been good forever, so that must mean that they're going to be good this year, no matter who the coach is or who the roster has, like whatever. Like, they're just always going to be good, and because they're such a big market, we're going to put them in. Like, no, like it's instead, like you said, like teams are actually having to fight their way through to that final game. And I mean, both of these teams have But I mean, both of them are sustaining a lot of injuries going into this game, which is also going to really test these teams' depth and their recruiting. I mean, because we saw in the Penn State versus Notre Dame game, Riley Leonard had to go out for a possible concussion, and they brought in their backup, and he was doing pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, he was throwing it pretty. He was launching the ball. It was. I think if they stick with him, like the Notre Dame's future is not like it's gonna keep looking good after Riley Leonard leaves.
I don't really know what to think of that drive because I saw when he was going down the field. I believe they got a field goal out of that possession when he was driving down the backup. I mean, it was a no huddle situation where you're kind of going off script. Everyone's kind of just trying to find a place in the zone to get downfield. I mean, he's good. Riley Leonard, though, I mean, he's been the leader of this team. So maybe in the future, I think he definitely could have a spot for the Irish to get better there. But Riley Leonard, I mean, talk about putting the team on your back. And Jeremiah Love on a knee brace. Power. Did you see that run? That power run where he's at the goal line and 3 Penn State guys are all converging on him. They have him wrapped up, and Jeremiah Love did not go down.
He would not stop. And he also, I remember before the game, he told himself, like, I'm not going to hurdle anyone this game.
Yep.
And he broke that rule towards the end of the game. And I mean, Notre Dame heavily benefited for it, and super glad that he didn't injure it further. At least we haven't heard that it's been injured any further. But yeah, no, I mean, Steve Angeli, he was 6 for 7 in his drive. He threw for 44 yards. I mean, that's pretty solid for, I think that was his first game this year. So
yeah,
I mean,
that's in a high pressure situation. I mean, he did what was asked of him. You can't ask nothing more for your backup, especially in a 2-minute drill. That's the most important drill in all of football. I really want to talk about before we get into the Texas and Ohio State, did you know that Penn State did not have one single receiver catch a pass?
I did see that. I low-key thought that was hilarious, just because it kind of makes sense too, because I mean their receivers aren't really talked about all that much, and
except
you have
Tyler Warren.
Tyler Warren, but he's a tight end now.
Exactly.
He's the best tight end in the Big Ten, possibly in college football right now, and obviously you're going to throw him the ball. He's your best weapon. Why would you not throw him the ball? But I mean, we did talk about this, I think, a few episodes ago about like Penn State in the transfer portal. I think Penn State is kind of addressing that problem already before, like they addressed it almost before it was even seen like in that game, because they picked up a couple receivers from USC that were pretty good and were productive. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Drew Aller in that offense next year. And their running backs are both coming back.
Yeah, they're running it back, essentially. Yeah. They're just saying, hey, we're running this back. They think that's the way to go. Listen, you have to be able to throw to your receivers.
Yeah.
In a playoff football game, since Ethan's not here, I'll kind of do the James Franklin bit a little bit. Like, it is a college football playoff game. You have to have competent receivers. And there was a couple throws by Drew Aller where I was just scratching my head. He had a walk-in touchdown to Nick Singleton on the flat route in the goal line. Just completely threw it behind him. Would have been a walk-in touchdown. They had to settle for 3, I think. Or I think they had to settle for 3. But, I mean, either way, you have to hit those throws. Like, Drew Aller, I mean, he's coming back. They think that running it back is going to solve everything. I'll tell you what, they'll probably win 10 games next year. Will they beat Ohio State? We have yet to see.
We'll see.
Will they beat Michigan? I don't know. Like, we just have yet to see Penn State win the games that they shouldn't win. They will always win the games that they should win.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I guess that means that, like,
stay relevant.
You win those games. Like, if you're supposed to win and you win, then it's like, okay, like, you at least know, like, those kind of expectations, but you also have to, like, throw in a couple surprises in there every once in a while and win those games that you're not really supposed to win. I mean, it's
the difference between elite teams and good teams.
Yeah. I mean, for Penn State, they're I'm looking at their schedule right now. They're lucky. I don't think they play Michigan, but they do play Ohio State and us back to back
Yeah,
next year.
IU. Yeah.
And we have been making moves in that transfer portal. I can't even right. I think
Of
we have a
course.
top 20 class right now in the transfer portal in football, which is crazy because I mean basketball, I think we had like the number 2 transfer portal class, which
Yep.
is like I mean, but that's because like we're a basketball school.
Yeah.
Like we're seen as a
It's
basketball
literally
school.
Hoosier hysteria.
Yeah. But now like
This
we
is-
see we're like the 18th or 19th ranked transfer portal team in football.
unprecedented. Unprecedented. No, I totally agree. Penn State needs to watch out because sure, you might be a relevant team, but when you have these other teams in the Big Ten, such as us, guiding up, and then all of a sudden it's not a team you're supposed to beat anymore, your relevance is at jeopardy. And I'll tell you what, when your relevance is at jeopardy, that's the only thing that's keeping James Franklin's job afoot right
Yeah.
now.
And I mean, in that game though, like Penn State, like all the guys on that team kind of did what they did what they were expected and supposed to do, but they still didn't win the game. And it's like at that point, I mean, Franklin didn't really call a bad game, in my opinion, but he has to do something that's more than exceptional, more than what is expected of him, because because he's almost like, for me, Franklin is at like a plateau. Like he's at a plateau where he's like, he's not great.
Yep.
Like he's not like national championship level tier. Like I guess Ryan Day is now apparently national championship level tier coach. Like he surpassed that plateau because Ryan Day was stuck on that plateau for a while because he couldn't beat Michigan, and because of the 14 playoff format, he wasn't able to go and try and win a national championship. But now he's there because of this 12-team playoff format. But James Franklin, same situation. You know, he's kind of on that same level of the plateau, can get double-digit wins seasons every single year. But once it comes down to playing a team where it's a little bit more challenging, you're not expected to win, you're the underdogs, he slumps back and he stays on that slope. And it's like, you've got to figure out a way to get past it and move up to that next level. And I mean, he's also done a lot of great things for that Penn State program. I mean, before he was there, there was all kinds of scandal around that program. But I mean, it's also been so long now. You know, like it's been what, like 10 years?
Yeah.
Like at some point, he has to just climb. And I mean, next year, I think could be that year for them just because they fix that wide receiver problem. Possibly. I mean, we'll see how well the receivers work with everyone else on the team, of course. The running backs are coming back. Drew Aller's coming back. I mean, I don't know if Tyler Warren's coming back, but if he's coming back, they could look like an Ohio State team, like this year's Ohio State team, where it's like every side, like all their wide receivers are good, their tight end is good, and their running backs are good, so they can throw all kinds of different plays at you and just use more of the playbook.
Yeah.
Which I think could play in Franklin's favor, but I mean, just because of how he's been recently, or just really the past like 10 years, I mean, it's hard to say that that's going to be the case, you know?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. He just doesn't, he's plateaued. He cannot like coach past the exceptional level. Like when things are great, he can't reach the excellent level with his team. And that's just going to be something that you would think he'd learn from, but it's not like he's a young guy. Like, you know, he's been at Penn State for a long time. Like, you would think he would get it by now. And the fact that he has not it only means that that's what I just expect out of Penn State now, is for them to get 10 wins, be a relevant team. Now that we have the 12-team playoff, they're going to make the playoff probably every year. And it would be an anomaly if they didn't. But I don't ever expect them to go above and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, national championship, I mean, they're going to have an easier path than the one they had this year, which, I mean, was arguably pretty easy. I mean, I don't necessarily think it was, like, insanely easy because, I mean, I thought SMU was a pretty good team. I think that home field advantage played a huge part in that win for sure for Penn State. But, I mean, Yeah, it's like they win, like they get on a hot streak and it's like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is James Franklin's time. And then they get there and then it's like, no, they just meet the expectation of falling short, I guess.
It's like Mike Tomlin's his win quota. You know how the Steelers get those 10 wins, 9 to 10 wins, and then the Steelers just turn into pumpkins. Like that's I'm not saying that Penn State turned into pumpkins. It was a very close game, but that's what we've been seeing out of them just from a historical perspective.
Yeah, I mean wow, I can't. The Steelers haven't won a playoff game since 2016. I mean,
that's crazy to think about.
Like what I've seen is that they're in football purgatory. That's the terminology that I've seen used, and that's where like you win more than 0.500 of your games, like you win more than 50% of your games, and you make it to the playoffs, but you lose in that first game of the playoffs, and then you don't get good draft picks because. You win.
You're too good.
You're too good to get good draft picks, but you're not good enough to win a playoff game.
You're relevant at what cost?
Yeah.
You're relevant at what cost? We could go on James Franklin all day, but I do want to get into this Texas Longhorns Ohio State game because, again, like I know I've been talking about this like a lot this year, but Quinn Ewers, man, like I cannot believe that he really started the whole season. Like, I know he was hurt earlier and Archman and got his time or whatever. But, man, I just feel like if Arch was in that game, I just feel like there would have been a different outcome. Maybe I'm crazy for that, but it's like Quinn, they were getting to him. Like, Quinn didn't have, like, a whole lot of time to throw, and I'm looking at his stats right here, 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. It's a pretty good stat line on paper. But when you watch the game, you realize that he had those yards because of the drawn-up plays that Sark could do for him. And there was no improvisation. He didn't improvise at all. Like, everything was on time, on schedule. And honestly, it's insane that Texas has gotten to the semifinal 2 times now straight. Like, they're almost there. They're knocking on the door to get into this championship run. Hopefully they can get it with Arch. But the play of the game for me was when I believe it was 2nd and goal on the 1-yard line. I think it was 2nd and goal. And this was Sark's worst play call of the night. They run a toss.
Yeah.
They run a toss to, I think it was Wisner, and they let Caleb Downs be a factor. Like, Caleb Downs is the best player on the field, and you're letting him be a factor. The play gets completely blown up, which leads to the Quinn Ewers getting strip sacked. Jack Sawyer, see you later.
Yeah.
Like, I could not believe my eyes. Like, why in the world would you toss that? If this was Madden, we're QB sneaking it, we're fullback diving it. I know this isn't Madden, but come on, you're on the 1-yard line. You're about to tie the game. Why are you running a toss? I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it.
And I mean, like, that is where you put Arch in. If you're 2nd and goal and you're about to score and tie the game, you put Arch in because you know that he has like stronger legs and he's more athletic than Quinn Ewers is. You put him in and you score the touchdown and you tie the game and possibly win. But no, instead you toss it out, get like a 7-yard loss essentially, and then you force. And Ohio State is one of the best red zone defenses in college football. You give them more room to work with. You're forced to throw on 3rd and goal. And then Jack Sawyer gets to Quinn Ewers. And that results in you, instead of scoring 7 points, you lose 7 points. So now instead of tying the game, you're down by 2 scores. And there's 2.5 minutes left to go. Like, you just put yourself in a horrible situation because of like the bad play call by Sark. And also, I think improvisation by Quinn Ewers, because I mean, you were saying like on paper, like his stats look good, but like he does not improvise well. He does not go off script very well. He can't adapt as well as other quarterbacks do. And that was one of those plays where like he even said in post-game interview that he knew, like he felt Jack Sawyer coming. then why would you get ready to throw the ball, have your arm up like this when you know Jack Sawyer is going to get there and hit the ball out of your hand, resulting in a fumble for him to pick it up and run it to the end zone? Like that, at that point, you throw it out of bounds. You just throw it out of bounds.
Yeah, I mean, or you step up in the pocket, take a sack, and then it's not that bad of a loss because you're stepping up in the pocket.
Yeah.
And like I know Texas offensive line like wasn't like blocking as well as they would have hoped, but still, this is where if Arch Manning was in the game, he gets out of that because he's a much quicker, he's a much faster player. That honestly, Arch Manning is probably going to have a great career at Texas because of his improvisation.
Yeah.
And Quinn Ewers held Texas back all year. I felt that way the whole time. They didn't have Texas didn't have the running backs to just be like, we're gonna out physical you. Those running backs, Wisner and I believe Blue, they just weren't physically imposing enough for them to overcome Quinn Ewers' limitations. But my gosh, dude. I mean, I really wanted to see overtime. I really wanted to see like a I know it was a good game. It just felt like a sour taste in my mouth when you see Jack Sawyer. I know they call him Captain Jack or whatever they call him. It's the most fakest name ever. But it's just like really we're gonna do a toss and then you throw it and then it's a fumble the other way. Oh my gosh, just absolute silliness from Texas and Penn State, frankly, which is what lost them these games.
Yeah, it's play calling, like especially in this scenario, like this setting where it's high pressure and like that it's gonna come down to every single play, especially in those final like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. It's gonna come down to that final play. You have to make sure that that play call is right, and you've got to make sure that you're prepared. Clearly, they had I don't know what Texas, especially Texas. I don't know what their game plan was on that 2-minute drive. I mean, they even if they got to fourth and goal, field goal, they could have gotten a field goal and possibly stopped Ohio State because, I mean, they were containing Jeremiah Smith well.
Yeah, he only had
Jeremiah
3 yards.
Smith had 3 yards in total. 3 yards. Like, they were containing the wide receivers pretty well. They could have easily forced Ohio State to punt and possibly score and, like, maybe win. I mean, because if they had the field goal points, they could have won.
Yeah,
but
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean Texas, they're right there though. Like in terms of being like a powerhouse, like because I really do think Quinn Ewers held them back immensely this year, and I mean honestly, I feel like they'll be perennial favorites to win it all next year with Arch at the helm. I mean it's Texas. They're gonna get great players all the time, but just silliness at the end right there. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Is Quinn Ewers coming back? Like not at Texas. I mean, like because I think he's done at Texas. There's no way they give him another shot. But I mean, is he coming back to college football? Like, how long has this guy been here, man?
I swear he keeps saying that he's not coming back, and yet there's all this stuff
they're throwing money.
Yeah, they're throwing money at him, and he's saying that he doesn't know about that. I just honestly, I think that's BS. I really do. There's no way. Like $6 million. Like
Carson
there's
Beck,
no way that he doesn't know. And then Carson Beck decommits from declares from
the NFL,
NFL draft.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, and then he goes to Miami.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, like I don't know why Miami is taking him. I mean, especially because like he's just going to be coming off an injury.
It's that Cavender girl. But I don't know. I don't know wa these teams are throwing money. I mean, I do know why. Because at the end of the day, Miami needs to stay relevant. So they need Carson Beck. A Big Ten team probably throws money at Quinn Ewers to stay relevant. And at the end of the day, this is why NIL is good because it may give an opportunity to a player that's not going to really make the NFL to make some money in college, which is great. But also, like, some of these players just overstay their welcome. But, I mean, all credit to them for using the system.
Yeah, I mean, if it's there and you're able to do it, then go for it, I guess. You know, like, I don't know. I mean, not all of us can stay in college for like 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, I've also been saying the same thing about like Hunter Dickinson, like just kind of going to college basketball. I've like just comparing the two. Like I've been saying the same thing about him for forever. It feels like he's been in college basketball for so long.
Yeah. I can't
Oh
believe
my
he came
God.
back this year. I thought he was done. Like, my gosh. And I mean, clearly he must not think he's NBA ready. And like clearly scouts and his agent must be telling him like you're not gonna get drafted. Because I mean it's weird though, because he is a big that can shoot threes. You would think that he would be able to find a roster spot. It's really weird how he is juicing the crap out of the system, which is good for him. But I don't know for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, at least like for football, I feel like it's weird because like with football, I think it's kind of okay in a sense, just because like college football is more on the rise than it has been before. Like viewership just keeps going up.
Yeah.
And it just like, I mean, like I said earlier, like we're kind of entering into a new golden age of college football where it just keeps becoming relevant, which is weird because it's like it's always been relevant, but it's also held itself back with like
The
the BCS
Yeah.
and the 4-team playoff. Like now it's going to 12 teams, and like there's going to possibly be 14 teams in 2026, and like it's just it's changing, but it's changing in like a positive way. Whereas like, I mean, in the NFL, like they already have like a pretty good like playoff system, and the game hasn't really changed too badly in a negative way. Besides kickoffs, I don't really like those too much now.
Yeah, and now you have to declare an
yeah.
onside kick now in the NFL. It's the stupidest thing ever.
It
because
destroys the whole point of an onside
onside
kick.
And I mean, I hate the Saints for what they did to the Colts in 2009 because of the onside kick the Sean Payton did at the surprise onside kick for the Saints to win the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, that play doesn't exist now because of that, because of these rules. And I understand they're trying to make the kickoff more exciting. They call it a dynamic kickoff. Dude, it looks weird. No one wants it. Touchbacks are happening more now than ever. So it really isn't a dynamic kickoff. Just go back. Kickoff is the easiest simple thing to get down for football. Everyone knows what it looks like. And when you change that, the kickoff, I mean, you're just completely changing the fabric of what our sport looks like, and it just doesn't even look right when the NFL kicks off.
Oh my God, the camera angle, like it's just so zoomed out.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I looking at? Like that's the first thing I'm thinking is what, like when I first saw the rule change, I'm like, what am I looking at right now? What is this? And then now I know what it is. I'm like, okay, obviously it's a kickoff, but it's still like the camera angles still look horrible.
Yeah.
Like it makes it look dumb. You know? Like
exactly.
the normal kickoff, like the camera just follows the ball to the like guy that's possibly going to be returning the ball. Like it's a lot. It just looks better.
Yeah.
Like aesthetically.
It looks very gimmicky.
Yeah.
On the NFL.
And also like the onside kick though, like the whole point of the onside kick is to catch the other team by surprise.
Yeah, I agree.
Seriously. Like now if you have to declare for it, there's no element of surprise. Like that's kind of part of the fun with the onside kick.
No, yeah, and it makes no sense how they like I don't know. It seems like the owners cave in on this stuff, and whenever they make a decision on something, it's like their way or the highway. I mean, and this is why college football, honestly, in my opinion, is a little bit better. I mean, I used to be a huge NFL fan. I still am, but just it's the fluidity of it. It's the sport. You get to see all the different environments. It's not held back by like too many rules. You know, obviously there's targeting and like normal rules, but it's not like you see roughing the passer every game and you're like, that wasn't roughing the passer. Like it's crazy. And also, I don't know if you saw the Buffalo Bills Denver Broncos game, and Josh Allen was on the bench and the referee comes up to him and he says, "Oh, that's my bad. That's my bad." And like pats Josh Allen on the back. Literally, you could read his lips. He said, "We'll get him next time." Like
what?
I'm like, what are we doing? Do you see why college football is better? Oh my gosh, man. and I used to be a big proponent of NFL is better, but no longer, man. I can't stand for stuff like that.
I mean, honestly, I don't think you're the only one either because I've been like just chatting around like just with other people like just casually, and I feel like people are kind of steering more towards college football, especially with this kind of new there's a lot more drama in it because like the rivalries are there, and now not just inter team rivalries, but now there's like conferences are just hating on each other. Like now everyone hates
Oh,
the
yeah.
SEC.
Yep.
Like it's just become like a trend almost to hate the SEC. Like or I guess to join the Big Ten because I mean we already have 18 teams. Might as well just add another 2.
The Big 20.
Like, I mean, why not? Why not have the Big 20? You know,
Uh,
but like yeah, it's just become like, and also I think it's partially just because I mean like we're all college students, so I feel like it's kind of easier to just gravitate towards college football because like you're kind of in that world,
Yep.
whether like you're on that team or not. Like you're still kind of involved in that world just because like we have the trident on like our shirts and hats or whatever. Like
Yeah.
like we're just constantly supporting like our brand, like
football,
our
yeah.
college, our like football team, our brand. Like
Yep.
it's pretty easy to gravitate. Like it's just really easy to gravitate towards college football. But like you were also saying, like it's just a more fun game to watch. The fluidity is so much better.
I agree. And speaking of college football and the NFL, what do these 3 names have in common? Jaden Daniels, Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Neighbors.
LSU.
They
all went to LSU.
They all went to LSU. And these guys, honestly, like looking back on it, I think Brian Thomas, he leads the league currently in receiving yards for a rookie like this year. I think. And Malik Neighbors, he was out a couple games, but I'm pretty sure Malik Neighbors, he's a stud, and Jaden Daniels just won his first playoff game last night. And I'm starting to think Brian Kelly is a huge fraud because he left Notre Dame and he said, and I quote, to win a championship at LSU. And he has come up short time after time. And if you look at that team with Jaden Daniels, I mean, that team was on the same level as like the Joe Burrow team, possibly. If history is revision and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors keep getting better and Jaden Daniels keeps getting better. But my goodness, you mean to tell me that with that team, he couldn't even get into the playoff? I know it was the 14 playoff last year, but like
they wouldn't have made the 12-team playoff.
Exactly, man. I mean, Brian Kelly. I know we criticize James Franklin a lot, and it's well received. But Brian Kelly, man, I mean, what has he done?
And
I don't know.
Kind of going off of that too, he leaves for LSU to go to a championship because he didn't think that Notre Dame was didn't give him the resources to do that. But
gave Marcus Freeman.
Well, Notre Dame's in the national championship and Brian Kelly's not. So who really got the last laugh here? I mean, seriously, like it. If anything, that really just showed how much of a fraud that Brian Kelly kind of is. Like,
yep.
You like just. I don't know. It just seems like it's like he doesn't get enough, but it's like at some point, like kind of like, I mean, we talk about like James Franklin all the time and about how like he doesn't like get over the hump and how he doesn't really like, he doesn't seem to help his team get to that next level. Brian Kelly almost does like the opposite in a sense that like, he went to LSU and LSU like already had like a pretty talented roster, but like he almost dragged them down essentially.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, totally. I think LSU eventually, they'll make the playoff. Maybe next year. Maybe next year, guys. But I mean, Brian Kelly, I mean, if you just think about it, he's probably one of the most fraudulent coaches in all of college football based on the amount of talent you have. I mean, LSU probably brings in a little bit more talent than Penn State.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you mean to tell me this year you guys just sucked it up and you missed the 12-team playoff entirely? I mean, come on, man. Come on. And I was watching their bowl game against Baylor. I mean, their defense couldn't really stop Baylor. I mean, I know they were leading a sizable amount the whole game, LSU was, but I mean, Baylor was driving down the field like, what's an SEC team, you know? Like, so I don't know. I think honestly, we need to kind of stop comparing conferences so much. Like, obviously, it's fun, you know, like to compare Big Ten and SEC. But I think if we just stop, like, blur the lines and just say which team's better, we'll be able to can come to a consensus. Because at the end of the day, these teams, it's football's a game of matchups, and
Yeah.
different teams match up differently against each other. Maybe Illinois is better than South Carolina, like we saw in that bowl game, because they have better edge rushers, and South Carolina can't protect their quarterback as much. Maybe that is the reason why they're better. Sometimes football is not just like, oh, this team's better. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, we cannot guard this receiver one on one. They're killing us down the field. We can't stop their RPO concepts. That's what a lot of teams faced with us this year. We're in a lot of RPOs, and teams could not stop it. And at the end of the day, if you have a matchup and you can exploit it, that's what it comes down. That's what football in general comes down to.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that's what it comes down to with really any sport too. I mean, like you look at March Madness in basketball, like some of the reasons why we see those upsets and why like it's so like fun is because of those matchups. Like UConn, like they could go on a huge run, but they could meet a team that like maybe they're like taller than them, or maybe they're able to shoot the three ball better and they're not able to guard the three or like something like that. And that team is hot behind the three that day and they end up winning the game. Like that, it's like you said, like, it's the same thing with football. And I feel like we like the analysts, like the professionals, like I feel like they need to look at like the rankings and the conferences and really like just all of these teams a lot more objectively than just being like, oh, they're an SEC team. They have to be good. They have to be one of the best. Or, I mean, even Big Ten, like, sure, like, we've been good. Like, we've been, like, seen as the best conference, I think, the past 2 years. But that doesn't mean we're going to be the best next year or the year after that or the year after that. Like, Big 12 could be the best conference next year. ACC could be the best conference next year. We don't know. It's a game, like, all those bowl games, like they could have been matched up completely differently. And instead of seeing like the ACC go like 1, 2, and 9 in bowl games, they could have gone 10-0, or they could have gone 11-0. And maybe Big Ten goes like 1-6, or the SEC goes like 2-7. I don't know. Like it just depends on like how teams match up with each other and how deep their rosters are. Like especially in those non-playoff bowl games, like who's going to be playing? Like, are they going to have their starting lineup in? Is a coach leaving? Like, or maybe the coach isn't like in the right mindset before this game, and they're thinking about like taking a different job. I don't.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of factors that go into football besides just the conference patch that you wear on your right or left shoulder.
Yep. Totally agree. We need to just focus on the teams, especially like, you know, if an ACC team is completely dominating their conference, they win their conference championship. Clearly, they're obviously going to get in because the auto bid system now. But I mean, we just need to be able to fairly assess teams. Teams can't control their schedules at the end of the day. I mean, of course, like any conference is going to have cupcake teams. Like you're going to have your Rutgers, you're going to have Michigan State's been bad for a couple years now. Your Michigan States, you're going to have teams that just aren't on the level because of where they're at organizationally as a school and as a program, as a football program. And right now, IU, hopefully, then they have been this year and hopefully for years to come, they're in the level of we're winning now and we're going to continue to get better year after year after year and week after week. But a lot of Big Ten schools, it takes time. It takes multiple head coaches. A lot of SEC schools, it takes time and multiple head coaches. You know how many times I heard fire Billy Napier this year for Florida, and now all of a sudden, since DJ Lagway did what he did, which I think it's more of a credit to DJ Lagway than it is to Billy Napier, now Billy Napier probably keeps that job for a couple years because of that. And I just think at the end of the day, it takes time. Like these things take time. Like, obviously, if you're an Ohio State or you're Texas, those are like blue chip teams, that will always get the best talent and they're always going to be in the race. But at the end of the day, if you don't have like the right man at the helm, you don't have like the right coaching staff or the right quarterback, which is the most important part of any team, then you're not gonna necessarily be a strong football program. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I mean, even just like in the games, just because there's so, like you have 11 guys on offense and you have 11 guys on defense, and you have a bench with like 30 people on it, probably like on average, probably more. Like there's just so many like people, like you probably switch in and out like per play, per drive, for injuries, for whatever else. Like there's a lot of moving parts.
Yep. Yep. I think that at the end of the day, this playoff is gonna keep expanding. And I would rather it be more teams get in than to not have like enough teams get in, I would rather see a couple blowouts here and there, but at the end of the day, it's only gonna improve. This, like you said, this is a golden age of college football where we're still learning, the committee's still learning, the NCAA, for what they're worth, is still learning. Eventually they'll get legislation on this thing. Somehow they're getting legislation on TikTok before college football, but whatever. I mean, it just, to me, it seems like it's gonna take some time for it to be perfect, but nothing's gonna be perfect because at the end of the day, like you said, we have a bunch of different students from a bunch of different schools and a bunch of different teams. There's always going to be someone that's left out, and there's always going to be someone that's unhappy, unless we did a system where it's like the NFL playoffs, where you have to have this record and you have a tiebreaker with another team, and it's like actual like record based playoffs, which probably won't happen, at least not in my lifetime, probably,
Yeah.
for college football. But unless we have that, then someone's always going to be upset, because if that was the case, then the teams have no one to be upset at, except themselves, because then it would be record based and not a committee or a computer putting in the rankings.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, either way, like if I was on one of the teams that like thought maybe they should have made it into the playoffs but didn't, like I would still be upset with myself because I'm like
Yeah.
on Ole Miss, like just like take Ole Miss for example. Like they probably had a good enough team to where they could have maybe made a run in the playoff, but you lose to LSU, like a pretty mid LSU team. You lose to a rebounding Florida team, and then you lose. Well, not even in this particular order, and you lose to Kentucky at home, and Kentucky is like the worst team right now in the SEC. It's like I would be mad that I just lost one of those games, because I would know like if one of those games had gone our way, we would be in that playoff right now.
Yep. And at the end of the day, it comes down, I mean, to small games. The details matter, especially in this sport. Um, I think eventually we'll be able to get a system where it gets most teams in. I think we need to have like a bowl system where like the bowl games could mean something, like maybe a bowl game bracket championship thing, like like the NIT
Yeah.
tournament. Yeah, that'd be cool for like the bowl system games, and eventually, it might mean something to if Boise State wins the whole bracket, and they get like decent recruits, and like, I mean, it could mean something, you know? I really think that there's definitely a couple changes, and like I said, like it will just take a couple years.
Yeah, and I think like part of the thing, at least like with bowl season, like something that might help it mean more. I mean, we're starting to move in that direction where more starters are going to be playing in like for their teams in those bowl games, because the coaches are now like they're seeing that it kind of has like it helps with recruiting, like you said. But I think at least like with the transfer portal, I think that's one thing that is going to have to be changed. If the bowl season is going to have like if it's going to mean even more than it does currently, just because, I mean, we saw it already with like Duke, for example, when they played Old Miss. Like they started, like, I think it was like their third string quarterback or something. And it was his first game of college football ever.
Yeah.
And he started in that game. And Old Miss had like majority of their starters in that game. And then they like get destroyed. And it's like, you look at that, like, at least just looking at the score, you think, oh, well, this is why bowl games are stupid. And this is why Old Miss should have been in the playoffs. No, like, Ole Miss played a depleted Duke team that like lost most of their roster. Like you can't just look at the score of the bowl games and be like, oh well, like just because like this team got blown out, this is why no one watches the bowl games. No, it's because players are moving to other teams while before these bowl games are going on. So like Malik Murphy, like he couldn't start in that game for Duke because he went to a different school. Like he's not on that team anymore. So he's not going to play in that bowl game. I think once they fix that, then like, at least have the transfer portal open after the bowl season is over, like after postseason is over, then that will kind of solve that problem a little bit. Like it'll at least like give it that push, and then it'll like more starters will be playing in those games, and then we'll actually really see like especially like for people that are like recruits, like freshmen, like future freshmen, like are going to be watching those bowl games. And that's going to influence their decision in where they're going to go to school that next year.
No, yeah, 100%. You know, it'd be really cool. It would be really cool if we ever had a March Madness style bracket for like a championship run. I mean, it would never happen. But like, can you imagine 64 pool teams? Like, just going at it. I mean, it would be pretty cool.
And no one would have buys either.
No one have buys. Maybe, the first four in thing that they do, where it's like some team has to beat another team to get in. I mean, that would be pretty cool. It would never happen. But why not? At the end of the day, March Madness also March Madness, they play their games like every 2 days or 3 days. Like it's on a pretty tightrope schedule.
Oh yeah.
Obviously for football, you have to go week by week. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things they could do with it. This is a new age. You can do really anything, and as long as you're including fan bases, teams, programs that haven't been there before, the fans and the ratings are going to eat it up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it brings in new matchups that we like don't normally see and maybe even haven't seen before.
Yep.
While also like bringing in more people, like not just talk down the SEC, because I do that a lot now.
I know, I see on your stories, man. You're an SEC hater. I don't like the SEC as much, but I can tell, man, you got some vigor in those words.
I'm to the SEC what Ethan is to James Franklin. So, but yeah, no, I mean, like we see new matchups, and it's not just going to be like, oh, another Alabama's in there again. Like it's another Alabama versus Notre Dame matchup, or it's another Clemson Alabama matchup, or it's another like Clemson Texas matchup, or like it's and all those schools, except Notre Dame, are like all in the South, but like an Alabama Notre Dame matchup is something that we see a lot. I feel like, like it's like every few years, but like it's always in like it would always be in like the postseason with like the 4-team playoff system. And BCS. But yeah, it's just something that we would see so often, and now we're going to see new matchups while also bringing in new programs into the fold, and it's going to benefit everyone. It's going to make it more competitive. It's going to force like the SEC schools to work harder, to like test them a little bit more, instead of it just being like, oh, we're going to do like a cakewalk, like out of conference schedule, and then we're going to play our conference games, and then we're going to go to the playoff, and oh, whoop-de-doo, we're already in the national championship.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, now we have to win every single game, or at least like every game even out of conference, like has more meaning to it. Uh, if we lose, we have to figure out how to bounce back, go through that adversity to still make it to the playoffs,
Yep.
and like
But at least now
fight three games to get there, at least to the national championship game. Like it's there's more at stake. Like there's more. It's the ante has been upped. The
yeah.
ante has been upped.
Yeah. And at least now, like in the BCS system, if you lost a game, it was basically over. You
Yeah.
know? And then college football playoff, if you lost a game, I mean, it's almost over. I mean, most of these teams had to be undefeated for you to even make the Final Four. But before we go here, I want to ask you, so this matchup between Ohio State and Notre Dame, who are you taking and why?
Mhm. Well, I have said this outside of the podcast, but I did, like, before I made my final picks, I always and I do this for March Madness too. Like, I'll just kind of pick teams like just based on like what my first thoughts are. And one of the things that I had on my bracket was Notre Dame winning the national championship. I had that. I had that on my bracket
So you're
on the record. Like I
sticking to
can I
it.
can post it too. I can post like the draft bracket. I have it. But I ended up changing it because I liked IU's passing game. Like I
That's
thought we would do a
right.
little bit better, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, Notre Dame secondaries came through and they locked us down. And even, I mean, throughout this whole playoff, I mean, they had some injuries like after they played us. They played Georgia. I think they sustained a couple injuries from Georgia. Like some of their players during the Penn State game had the flu. Like, but they're still Notre Dame is still at this game. They still made it.
Yeah.
So even though like their path, it might not have been the most difficult, like Ohio State's probably was, or they didn't really make it seem too difficult, but
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, it was probably the most difficult.
Yeah.
But I feel like Notre Dame has gone through a little bit more adversity. And I feel like, I mean, Ohio State is also kind of the same. Like they're pretty tight knit, they're really close, and they like know how to overcome adversity as well. And that like that's one commonality between both these teams. They've overcome a lot of adversity this year with the losses they've taken and the paths that they've taken through this playoff. Um, but I think at the end of the day, I think Marcus Freeman, I feel like he still has that game on his mind from last year, beginning of the year, where they lost on a last second touchdown from Ohio State. I think he gets revenge, and I think he brings Notre Dame their first national title
It would
since
be
1988. And this,
would be really
I
cool.
would love to see it just because, like, well, because I have my family are huge Notre Dame fans.
Yeah.
But also, like, it would just be cool to see, like, in my lifetime, because there's been a couple times where it's been a possibility, like like Notre Dame versus Alabama in that BCS championship, where Alabama ended up just crushing them, and then Notre Dame made it into the CFP. They played Clemson, and they lost like 3-33 or something like that. Like it was pretty bad. But now it feels like an actual like it feels like it can actually happen.
I agree.
You know?
I agree that it could actually happen possibly. This game is so hard to pick because I mean Ohio State, they're just steamrolling folks. I know they didn't steamroll through Texas, but still a double-digit win. I mean, it's like Notre Dame is like a team of destiny right now,
I
though.
know.
But also it's like Notre Dame is barely winning these games. You know, they're like eking it out. You know, and it's like, are they really like that good, or are they just barely getting by? And then is Ohio State really going to rock their world whenever they actually get in the championship? I see two scenarios happening in my head. I see either the scenario where Notre Dame has a game-winning field goal on the line, they kick it, they win, or I see the possibility of Ohio State being the I believe it was 2012 or 2011 when Alabama just steamrolled Notre Dame. I could see that happening. I don't know why. And also, it's because Notre Dame is also very hurt. Like, Like, their team
Yeah.
is very hurt. And talent-wise, like, Ohio State is just, they're oozing with talent. But Notre Dame's defense is very good. They've been able to stop a lot of teams, but I don't know if they've gone up against, like, a passing game like this. If Ohio State decides to say, we are throwing the ball like they did against Tennessee and Oregon, I'm not for sure if Notre Dame has any answers. Like, at this point, because of who Notre Dame has played, I get that they just played Penn State with Tyler Warren, but again, Penn State didn't even have a catch for a receiver. Like, that's Notre Dame's, this is not a grinded out game anymore. Like, this is not Georgia where Gunnar Stockton's the QB. They haven't had any rapport all year. They're just handing the ball off, trying to out physical, and it's not working because Notre Dame has been the more physically imposing team. But that's what I'm saying. I just feel like Ohio State has that advantage. I feel like it pains me to say this, dude. It pains me to say this because it just everything. My head is saying Ohio State. My heart is saying Notre Dame because they got the heart of the champion. But I have to say Ohio State's gonna win this game, unfortunately.
I mean, to counter, I feel like Notre Dame secondaries, like at least this this playoff, they've really shown out. The secondaries have really shown out. So I think if they're able to lock down that passing game early, I feel like that's probably their best chance to win.
Yep. Isn't it funny that IU's 2 losses are to Notre Dame?
Yeah, to the 2 national title contenders, our 2 losses are to them. Only to them. So, Kirk Herbstreit, I believe you owe Hoosier Nation an apology. Whether it's a manifesto or just a simple little tweet or just like on college game day, you're like, hey, you know what? This is pretty fun that they're pretty funny that IU's only losses are to Ohio State and Notre Dame and they're contending for a national title. But I think also just kind of going back to the national title game. I think that I was gonna say something and I just like completely lost it. I feel like I don't know. There's just something about this Notre Dame team. Like it's like they get injured and then they're like this 2-headed monster that like it's like they just keep getting stronger. Oh wait, I remember. It was even though like their games, like you were saying earlier, like they were pretty close and like grinded out games. I feel like at least with the Georgia game, they had that locked down.
Yeah. About
5 minutes into the fourth quarter. I feel like they just kind of ran the clock out and just didn't want to sustain it. Like they didn't want any more injuries. I feel like they were just trying to control the game at that point because they knew they had won it and they knew like that Georgia was done. I think they kind of did the same thing with us too. Penn State, not really. I feel like Penn State was a little bit more physical than at least on paper. Like it was at least on paper, Penn State was more physical. But I think if Notre Dame keeps it close, I think they win. I think they like in those close games. I feel like they come out on top.
It's going to be a very interesting first quarter. If you can withstand the barrage of Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, all the scripted plays that Will Howard is so good at, because even though I don't like Will Howard, I will say he's very good when he has a script in front of him and he executes the script, especially his touch lately has been on point in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So if he executes that, but biggest thing for me on Notre Dame's defense is turn your head to the ball.
Yes.
Do not receiver watch, please. Like that's what got Oregon killed. That's what got Tennessee killed. Not so much Texas. You see they kept that game a lot more closer and Ohio State had a dink and dunk downfield. Not really so the deep shot down the middle. But it's going to be a very interesting game. I'm very excited to see it and let's do it, man. This is the end. It's the end.
Yeah. I mean, that like you were saying earlier with the like just turning your head, like we've been talking about that, I feel like for like weeks now, where it's like the players, they're just like they're just going up and they're just sticking their arms up, but they're staring at the receiver and they're not looking at the ball.
They
If
could
you
get a pick,
turn your
too.
head at the ball,
Yep.
you don't get the flag, but like you just said just now, you could get the pick if you're watching the ball.
Yep.
all you have to do, your head's there. Oh, that's where the ball is. Oh, I'm gonna grab it right here like this, like, and oh no, pick! Ha! We have the ball.
Oh my gosh.
And plus, like, wouldn't you want to pick to improve your stat line? Also,
I agree.
I mean,
I agree. But I think it's gonna come down to like little details like that for this game. But I'm ready. This is it. This is what we've been talking about. This is what we've been leading up to. So let's have a good national championship. I'm just hoping it's a good game.
yes, yeah. I definitely don't want it to be a blowout.
No,
Not just because
I'm not
it'll
for
like
blowout.
make the 12-team playoff format look bad, but also because I don't want to see, well, if it's a blowout on Notre Dame, I don't want to see that. No. Neither of us want to see that. But yeah, no, I mean it's weird because like we've been talking about college football for so long and it feels like this season can just go on forever.
I know.
Just because of how great it's been and how much fun it's been. But like they say, all good things must come to an end, which is very unfortunate, at least in the case of college football. But for us, that also means new beginnings, or I guess we're going to be kind of starting from the middle with college basketball. But yeah, I think for college basketball, we're about like halfway through conference play or something.
It's always better to go towards the
yeah.
end. Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too with college basketball. That's definitely the most fun part of the season is like towards the end, like those last few weeks leading up to college championships, and then college championship season is always also really fun to watch. I mean, I remember NC State last year. That was so fun to watch them go on that run where they started all the way from the back of the bracket. Like this is why like college football playoff format is so much fun because like you have to fight your way up. North Carolina State fought their way to the ACC championship. They won. They make it into the March Madness tournament. They fight their way all the way to the Final Four to go up against Purdue. Like, and I swear, like last year, that was actually one of my picks was North Carolina State to Final Four.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that team too with DJ Burns. I mean, no one expected that. You know, I mean, stuff like that, crazy stuff can happen, especially college basketball. So I'm ready to talk about that, and we'll get into that coming up. So yeah.
So next week we're gonna, I guess, reflect on the national championship. We're either gonna be really, really happy, or we're probably gonna be really sad. Well, yeah, we're gonna reflect on the college football season or college football national championship. We've already kind of reflected on the season as a whole, but we'll probably like maybe go back on a couple of points with Ethan, and then we'll start going into college basketball season. What we think about IU basketball, because there has been some interesting storylines, to say the least, with IU basketball as of late.
Indeed.
Yeah, so just a lot to look forward to, even though the college football season is coming to a close. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Yeah.